When it comes to how the average person games, people have a preference for how they hydrate or dehydrate themselves, depending on how you see it. Usually the go-to stereotype for that is a sugary drink. Say Mountain Dew, for example, which has had its own foray in embracing said stereotype, with a variety of game-centric Mountain Dew products, from tie-ins with popular franchises to your general gaming-themed drink line, Kickstart. I remember downing a can or two back when I thrived on caffeine. I don't recommend having that kind of lifestyle if you value your health, but it kept me going when I felt myself about to crash. And that's always been the concern I've had when it comes to these energy drinks, because you've got these not-so-soda, but essentially soda energy drinks that are chock full of caffeine, and God knows what else they put in them for the sake of taste. Red Bull and Monster being the bigger names in the world of energy drinks, with a vast variety of flavor profiles to choose from, with Monster having the largest that you'll ever see. From Blue Hawaiian to Ultra Vice Guava, it's without a question a laborious task to keep track of what's come and gone over the years when it comes to Monster Energy. Red Bull, on the other hand, has had plenty of flavors, maybe nowhere near as many as Monster, but they've had a fair share come and go. And like I've said already, these two are just the biggest of the bunch here. You've also got Bang, Celsius, Rockstar, and many more trying to get beat in the vast sea known as the caffeine market. What these all mostly have in common is that they would often try to target a certain majority, that being mainly gamers. Over the years, much like how Mountain Dew has done, but in a less grandiose manner of advertising, they'd cater to gamers through exclusive promotions. Rather than inventing an exclusive flavor as a fun little tie-in, instead you get things like XP boosts or in-game rewards, which would function as an incentive in order to encourage the sales of the energy drink brand, promoting whatever game may be coming, while in turn raking in the cash. It's a win-win for everyone involved. You don't need to be a genius to figure out that much. But over the years, there's been a health craze sweeping all across the world. People are starting to scrutinize exactly what it is they consume on a regular basis, reading the back of labels to discover a hideous secret about their favorite product. And this isn't entirely a new thing that came from nothing exactly, because even back in the early 2000s, you had documentaries about this health crisis sweeping over the United States when it came to obesity. You had people questioning why there's a laundry list of ingredients on what they're consuming, if certain dyes are necessary, if we're trading quantity over quality with how mass-produced things have become now. This has been an ongoing battle that's been going on for a lot longer than you think, and I think it's only gained further traction because this kind of research is more easily accessible thanks to the tiny portable computers in our pockets. Now we can make informed choices on what we consume on a daily basis, because reading the nutrition label isn't nearly enough to know what we put in our bodies. Naturally, a whole generation of people are going to actively be health conscious as a result, and energy drinks are certainly no exception to the rule. Sure, some of them put out zero sugar variants as a soft answer to keep enabling the purchase of their products. What the heck does it matter if you're putting in ingredients that could pose a health hazard to your consumers? Even if you eliminate the sugar, what you've got essentially is now a cocktail of consequences, and not everyone is willing to take a gamble on that. You also have brands like Celsius trying to get fancy with it by putting in essential vitamins into their drinks with a tad less caffeine. But again, the ingredients can often leave a lot to be desired, and they aren't exactly targeted toward hardcore gamer fans. Which leaves any gamer with a caffeine addiction an important question. What are you supposed to be drinking? Water? I mean, yeah, please drink water. Gotta stay hydrated and all that. But that can get rather boring after a while, and it isn't going to keep you from face planting after a long session of the latest multiplayer FPS. Now is it? Thankfully, that niche has been fulfilled by companies who exclusively cater to not just gamers, but also those who are fans of certain streamers or content creators, or anime waifu enthusiasts. If you thought all the flavors I had mentioned with Monster earlier were wild, you haven't even seen the huge variety that they have to offer, and there's a chance they may be healthier somehow. Anything that advertises itself as an essential part of a complete breakfast is already highly suspect though, but to claim that you have all the necessary vitamins and whatnot, this is definitely a claim worth looking into, but finding a place to start is not quite simple, because much like all the mainstream energy drinks out in the market, there's a bunch of brands looking to make a profit off of the gamers. Whether they're actually good or not will depend on the individual, though if there's anything I've learned from Nintendo fans, sometimes you just gotta blindly consume the product to find out. When I first got my computer from a small company by the name of Evolve, which is now rife with crypto scammers and unfulfilled orders these days unfortunately, I was given these little packets of drink mix to try, which was odd, given it was the last thing I expected to get thrown in, but sure enough, it was the first time I had heard of a brand that catered to a niche I didn't even know needed filling. Everyone at least has one favorite streamer these days, maybe an Oshi or two on the side they watch. While this isn't really the only brand to do this, it was the first one I'd ever heard of to do so. The advanced GG packets not only had interesting flavors to get hooked on, but they even supported certain creators whose brands or mugs were plastered all over the flavor, usually an exclusive flavor at that even. You'll find that many creators or streamers tend to supplement their income off these sort of deals, which can also mean exclusive merchandise on top of that, from shakers to t-shirts to even pins. So don't be surprised if I bring up these same points throughout this video. They all are mostly identical in that sense. But when it comes to what they have to offer, what you can order, the different types that exist, it's a staggering amount to keep track of. To keep it simple, Advanced GG offers 5 different choices of formulas: focus better, boost energy, stay hydrated, sleep/recovery, and build muscle. What they all have in common is that there's 0 sugar in all of them, which is a good start, I suppose, but that also means that they're using artificial sweeteners in lieu of that. They seem to be quite transparent about what they have in their formulas, and even include a standard Proposition 65 warning to let you know you could get cancer and all that jazz. And with it advertising itself as a dietary supplement, this is pretty much a given, but what exactly makes it different from taking gummy vitamins, for example? Well, it all comes down to flavor variety, and whether you hate yourself enough to consume it in such a boring way. These kind of companies are trying to offer a solution to a tedious menial task like that by inventing flavors you've never heard of, like Advanced GG's Column C or Sunberry. Very tame flavors compared to what will come up later, but it's one of those very distinct features that many of these have from one another, because otherwise they're objectively meant to be healthier than just chugging a regular energy drink in theory. But they've all got a lot going on, that I will say. Getting back to Advanced GG, while browsing the site, I'd noticed that some of the links on their website were either broken or were loading up for me properly, which I don't know if that's intentional, but it certainly did confuse me at first. I did find a full list of creators and streamers that have limited edition flavors, and they all seemingly lean more toward VTubers. I guess because who else better to sell all these fruity flavors than with them, right? I'll be honest, I'm not entirely familiar with many of them whatsoever, and that's not really a knock against the people who have flavors of Advanced GG. Nothing wrong with a little side hustle like this, but I do have to wonder how viable it is for them to keep giving each and every person a flavor like that. It isn't to say that they don't have a following worth warranting it, but that's just the problem. The only reason that you're going to purchase this specific flavor is if you're a huge fan of them, not because you're the average consumer looking to try any and all flavors that they have to offer. I'm sure there's a dedicated few who do, but that's far in between. Most of the sales are going to be those said fans of those creators, and I don't necessarily know how well these are selling. I can't find any information that tells me what has sold the most or what the general stock is for each creator exclusive flavor. All I can figure out is that once they're gone, they're gone. So I'd have to assume from a business standpoint, there's probably less than 50 tubs of each flavor on offer. I don't know if Advanced GG is going to remain profitable based on selling to those splintered fan bases, but it never hurts to have more options in the main 5. It does seem that they're trying to dip their toes in the anime sponsored flavors, which seems to be doing well from what I could tell, but they're definitely quite tame with how they handle their products, unlike the next company I'm going to be talking about. It does appear that they're also trying to offer protein-based formulas, which are limited in terms of choices, but they could be worth keeping an eye on in the near future. Overall, it's definitely taking it steady when it comes to variety and growth. There isn't a lot of information that can really tell me what's going on with Advanced GG as a company, so I'm having to mostly draw my own conclusions based on what I've researched. It does appear to have a local group of folks who drink it for various purposes, but the market is quite competitive as I've come to understand, and they seem to be far behind in comparison to the rest in this video. But it might be worth trying out if you need something that's unique enough and not totally out there. You might just find something you like. So remember how I said Advanced GG was tame when it came to presentation and what it had to offer? Well, GamerSupps takes all of that and throws it in the trash. Visiting the website, you're instantly hit with what I can only describe as anime brain rot galore, which is up a notch from what you'd seen earlier. I don't even know if I can show most of these products, at least not without getting bonked by YouTube for it. At this point, I was starting to question if I should just give up on trying to do this video. I was way in over my head, thinking I could actually cover the subject. But I had to find the courage to mentally process what I was witnessing on my screen. This had to be done. I'd already been too deep to turn back now, so I braved through the site further for the sake of entertainment. GamerSupps, unlike Advanced GG, seems to offer a lot less when it comes to the type of formulas that they have on offer. They do offer a form of sleep aid, known as AFK, which gives you the option of melatonin-free, if you're sensitive to that kind of thing. Not to mention, they aren't sold out or unavailable like they are Advanced GG. You also seem to get a lot more servings for less of the price that Advanced GG was offering, so they do have an upper hand in that respect. Huge props to them for that. GamerSupps also seems to offer caffeine-free versions for the majority of their flavors, while Advanced GG offers certain flavors in 5 of its categories. For some reason, the limited edition flavors of the website don't appear in the regular collections list, despite them all having differentiating objectives, so it's a bit of a mess. On GamerSupps, everything seems to be more clear-cut, and even includes the limited time flavors that they have on offer. Also, all the links on the website navigation work, so that's another win for GamerSupps. That all being said though, we do have to talk about the flavors that they have on offer. It's a huge elephant in the room here. It would be impossible to not talk about GamerSupps without mentioning the wild, freaky, flavors that they're selling, as well as the choice of art. Good lord help us all. So just like how Advanced GG does, there are exclusive flavors dedicated to streamers/content creators. Again, leaning mainly toward VTubers, yada yada. They're also doing a fair amount of collabs of certain anime franchises to various brands like Opera GX and Hololive, whereas Advanced GG is extremely late to the game from what I can tell, or at least they don't have enough capital to make that happen. Either way, it's just an observation, don't shoot the messenger. So let's talk about the flavors. Been holding off on this for as long as I can, obviously. Right off the bat, without even trying to look, the first thing that I see is the Plowed and Proud flavor. Yeah, not hard to tell what that's alluding to exactly. And look, you can even get a version where she's wearing a cow print bikini if you're lucky. Yeah, probably keep these hidden somewhere if you have guests over. And this isn't like a one-off flavor with a weirdly suggestive or crude name. There's multiple of them. Doggy Style, Grandma's Ashes, Copium, Raw Meat, Incel Tears, Lean, Anime Girl Thigh. Like, holy fuck! Exactly what are any of these supposed to taste like? I've never looked at any products with as much bewilderment as I have with whatever crack GamerSupps is smoking to make any of these a reality. Like, why is there inflation? Why is there inflation art on this? Who approved of this? And I'm just scratching the surface here on the flavors, because believe me when I say that their discontinued flavors are equally abominations. So it's safe to say that they have the most unique flavors out of literally anyone that you'll have seen here today. And I do recognize the majority of those who have flavors with GamerSupps, unlike Advanced GG in this instance. I guess you could say that Advanced GG is more for the smaller niche fan bases, while GamerSupps is catering to more well-known names. So I think most of their sales, on top of the wacky flavors, are mainly the streamers, or VTubers in this case. In fact, what I was saving for last is something completely unrelated to the supps on offer, VCard. I've never really been much of a trading card player by any means. I mean, I did have a collection of Pokemon cards and whatnot growing up, but I've never seriously attempted to really do anything with them. I was just a dumb kid stuck in his own little world. So could you really blame me? But it's surprisingly still a huge business these days, with people fighting over those Pokemon cards on a constant basis ever since the pandemic happened. So naturally, it shouldn't be much of a surprise that many other card games have come into existence. Rather than coming up with monsters or creatures for this specific game, GamerSupps has gathered up any and whatever VTuber with massive melons is popular, and are making them fight to the death, for whatever reason I can fathom. And apparently, a lot of people are interested in this concept. Though whether it's to actually play or collect, I don't really know at this point, but VCard might be the next big thing if you literally can't even buy anything remotely related to it on the GamerSupps website. It's something I just wanted to point out, because the idea of anime girls flopping their giant bazingas around while getting into a slap fight is kind of funny to think about. I suppose my only nitpick with GamerSupps is the fact that many of their flavors aren't necessarily related to gaming, but rather streamers/content creators who game in general. There isn't any collabs of notable gaming franchises, just notable VTubers with a side of queso or schlatt for whatever reason. It's mainly aiming for an audience that enjoys VTubers with massive coconuts in this instance, which is fine, but don't expect to see it on store shelves, unlike the next brand, who I discovered by casually shopping one day. The biggest problem that Advanced GG and GamerSupps are suffering from is the fact that you can really only purchase their products online. They're too niche to even make a profit, like all the mainstream drinks at your local grocery store. And that's usually because they're too small to operate at such a level. There's too much at stake to really take that chance, and the overhead is just insane for them to actually cater to that market in general. But what if I told you there is someone who's done that? Maybe to middling success at that perhaps, but it's certainly the furthest anyone has gone to selling to the masses. GFuel is probably the hugest name out of everyone here. If I had to rank them in terms of growth and wide appeal, it would be GFuel first, GamerSupps second, and Advanced GG at dead last. Whenever I go shopping at my local Publix, I'd see these energy drinks being sold, which had a variety of different streamers or game franchises being represented. From PewDiePie to Sonic to Tetris, it was like finding gold. When I was a huge caffeine drinker, I had at least one of these a day to stay awake, and they were pretty damn good. I don't know when they decided to pull them from the store shelves, because after having a medical crisis, I did have to stop consuming highly caffeinated drinks in general, but from what I can gather based on the site's store locator, they do have them at FYE and CVS for whatever reason. Either way, it's like I said, they have their products on store shelves. Not to mention, they've got all sorts of creator and iconic franchise deals, unlike the previous two. We're talking Borderlands, Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, Street Fighter, Hatsune Miku, Sonic the Hedgehog, and the obligatory line of YouTubers and various streamers / content creators. They pretty much got everything for everyone, which is why I'd argue G Fuel is the most successful brand here. The wide appeal cannot be denied. You aren't gonna find the anime girl thighs flavor in the energy drink aisle anytime soon, and aside from the motley of IP-themed flavors, they, like Advanced GG, sell a variety of formulas for any purpose you're looking for. But unlike Advanced GG, you're getting more than just that. G Fuel's energy and protein gives you not just your gains and vitamins, you also get a decent boost of caffeine depending on how much you put in. Another benefit with G Fuel's blend is that it's rather affordable, about $10 cheaper if you don't get the bottle. Not to mention you can also purchase a starter kit that lets you try every flavor, meaning you don't have to commit to purchasing an entire bag. Oh, and one more thing, you can also subscribe and save 50% if you do end up liking it. It's nothing against Advanced GG though, they're in a competitive market. Sometimes the overhead to do that just isn't always possible. That's business for you. And while GamerSupps is clearly not struggling, with it basically fulfilling its own niche in general, G Fuel is definitely a huge name in the market that you either compete with or you try to exist in another form. How G Fuel really stands out is again with those single serving packs, which are practically non-existent with the other two. At least nowadays, you can build yourself a starter kit with pre-selected flavors and get a cup on top of that for an affordable price. Now the only downside to this is that there's only so many single serving packets unfortunately, so the selection is rather limited on that front, and the starter kit only lets you pick from 6, which is because there's only 6 to pick from. So if there is a flavor you really want to try, you really don't have much of an option there. I guess that's the downside with all your flavors being IP based, since many of them tend to be limited time offerings, even offering a collector's box for it. Even then though, they do have OG flavors, so why they don't manufacture single serving versions for those is a mystery. The good news is there's always new flavors coming, whether that be IP based or a new OG creation from the lab. G Fuel is doing its best to ensure you don't get bored. And no, this isn't an advertisement for G Fuel. Do you really think I'm a sellout this early into my YouTube career? That's just a rhetorical question, by the way. They've got a lot going on here, just like GamerSupps, except they really want you to try their flavors, going as far as having a quiz that determines what you like and should purchase. There's even a nearly inescapable pop-up that's trying to influence you into buying something with a 20% off coupon and free shaker. They're worse than Wikipedia when it comes to begging for your money, and maybe even that could turn most potential consumers off from it. Not to mention, there was a bit of a blurb going around that G Fuel's products contain traces of lead, which again, everything and anything in California causes cancer. But you be the judge on that labeling. Speaking of health concerns, what does the internet have to say about all this? We're in an age where information of all sorts is just at our fingertips, so I'm sure you, the viewer, can weigh the risks of consuming any of these brands on a regular basis. If you use more than what you need, you could cause long-term harm to your health. It's all about moderation. I think anyone with half a brain knows this much, but what you may not know is what they put into them to make these formulas sugar-free, which I feel I should at least inform you folks at home of before you decide to take the plunge, so to speak. So when anything has zero sugar in it, it's typically using an artificial sweetener to achieve results similar to sugar itself. One of the more common ones that you'll see is sucralose. According to the FDA, it's safe for human consumption. However, if you aren't used to consuming it, you could feel a little bloated, perhaps even make frequent trips to the bathroom. It's also been linked to increase in calorie intake, drastically affecting your gut microbiome, and many other things that are still being studied as we speak. And I do think this is something important that isn't really talked about when it comes to whatever Advanced GG, GamerSupps, or GFuel want to peddle out to potential customers. You should be having these in moderation if you feel you need caffeine or just a little drink as a pick-me-up in general, because there are people who go a little overboard with it. Even when I was having a single GFuel energy drink once a day, you have to keep in mind that that's still 300 milligrams I'm consuming. Combine that with a poor sleeping schedule and other factors, it does put a toll on your body eventually. It's also led to a couple hospital scares over the past couple years, so my advice for those of you who need caffeine, keep it natural. There are alternatives out there, maybe not as wild as anime girl thighs, but tea is a good example of something you could try instead. Or better yet, actually go to sleep at a reasonable time. Yeah, wow. Imagine that, sleeping. But trust me when I say this, it makes a world of a difference to do so. Now that we've gotten this all out of the way, overall, what's the verdict on all this? To me, it seems like an emerging market that's quite competitive, something that I think even Coca-Cola and Pepsi are scrambling to find ways to compete in. Even though many of them are healthier in the grand scheme of things, you are spending quite a bit on the products themselves and the shipping at that. And in a world where tariffs are hitting everyone hard, things are just going to keep getting more expensive as time goes on. So maybe you should stick with what's being offered around you locally. Because while I do enjoy the idea of drinking anime girl thighs unironically, or finding out what a Wampa fruit tastes like from Crash Bandicoot, I don't know if I want to spend over $30 to $40 alongside taxes and shipping. GFuel is able to market itself enough to where it could maybe afford to be in more places, but I can't say the same for GamerSupps or Advanced GG though. Their goals and capital are quite different especially, so maybe they want to keep appealing to a specific segment of potential consumers, rather than appealing broadly in a sense. Where Advanced GG will be in 5 years, I'm not sure. GamerSupps is planning to stick around and produce wild formulas, and GFuel seems to have a solid foundation to ensure it remains on top. So while I don't have the financial means to really try them all out, I do understand why they exist. And if any of you have tried any of these ones that I've mentioned in this video, please tell me all about it. Maybe I've missed a company beyond the big three while researching this topic. The chances of that happening are never zero. That all being said though, it looks like I'm going to be getting a good night's rest tonight. The AFK mommy milk formula is starting to kick in. Anyways, see you all next time.